Hey, Next Level crew, welcome back to another episode of What's Your Next. And today we've got a really great topic to cover, and that is navigating uncertainty and franchise ownership in the face of economic shifts. And if you haven't been paying attention out there to the news, I would say that this is one of the times, at least in my lifetime, where there is so much negative news out there that I'm not sure how anybody can stay positive about anything, much less about franchising. So today we want to talk about the impact of what's going on in the world today a little bit, and the economy and franchising.
Welcome to What's Your Next. This is the go-to podcast for aspiring business owners who want to get to the next level, escape the rat race, and give their middle finger to the corporate 9-to-5. If you want financial freedom, work-life balance, and the business of your dreams, you're in the right place. Dave and Stacy Riska, husband-wife franchising duo, openly share their successes, failures, and lessons learned in franchising, business ownership, and working with your spouse.
So we're going to start off today with just really a question for Stacy, and we'll kind of debate this topic a little bit. Is now the right time to explore franchising?
Is now the right time? Let's roll the dice. Well, you know what? Don't roll the dice. And Dave's right. Every morning we sit down to breakfast. He comes down and he's sharing all this doom and gloom. Did you see this in the news? Did you see that in the news? It's like Armageddon. But here's the thing. I look at it from a different perspective. A lot of what you see and hear in the news today, it all seems like doom and gloom. But you know what? That's what sells. They put negative news out there because otherwise you wouldn't watch it. It's like driving by a car accident. Everybody wants to stop and see what's going on. So I have a little bit of a different take on it. Is it a great time to get into franchising? Well, the answer is maybe. So Dave, let's debate this a little bit because we talk to a lot of our candidates, many of them, and we've even heard from personal friends and family members, there are a lot of job layoffs. People are getting laid off. The job market is tighter. Yes, the world seems to be in economic crisis. But you know what? A lot of the candidates we're talking to, they're saying, I don't want to go through that again. I am sick of being a slave or being stuck to somebody else's wealth. And you know what? It's time for me to take control of my future. So what are you hearing when you talk to candidates?
Well, Stacy, I'm hearing the same thing, and it's difficult to not listen to what they're saying because, again, some of this is reality. The reality of the whole thing is that this is just an economic cycle. We've been through this many times, sometimes worse than others. Is this going to be worse than the last one? Who knows, right? We all don't know. It's just one of those things where if you pay attention to the news and you base all your decisions on the news, then you're probably not going to go outside, much less consider looking at a franchising. Here's the reality of it, though. There really is not a great time to invest in anything. It's about investing for the long term. And in terms of franchising, it's about, hey, maybe it's time for a life shift for me. Maybe it's time that, I've been in this corporate 9-to-5 for many years and I really need a change. It's not working for me. So if that's the case, then it really doesn't matter what the economy's doing. I mean, there's been times in history, take the Depression, where some of the best companies that exist today were started at the worst possible time. And in fact, in business itself, sometimes the best time to get in business is when things are the worst. And the reason being is because, that's a time where a lot of people have given up. A lot of businesses have gone under. It doesn't mean the economy stopped. And generally, it means that the next move in this cycle is going to be stimulus and some type of an economic revival. So let's talk.
So let's talk about this perhaps from our personal situation, right? Because we started our franchise, a coffee smoothie business, in 2006. Winning, gung-ho, ready to take over the world. And then what happened?
Well, we'll just say It wasn't good in 2008.
Right, this thing called 2008, right.
Right. So again, when you talk about timing, we got in at the absolute top of the market. We're thinking, oh, wow, this is great. This is easy. I mean, we're going out there and taking over the world, and we can borrow as much money as we can get our hands on. Well, 2008 hit, and things changed fairly quickly when all that happened. Now, are we going to see the same thing? Nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball out there. What I can say is that we picked probably a really bad time to get in. We survived, and we're still there. 17 years later, we're still running the same franchise, doing very well with it for many, 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 many years. So it was tough at the time it happened. Is it going to happen now? Nobody knows. What I can say is that, as I said, there's really never, and if you're getting in for the long term, there's really never a great time to get in to going into business. And the reason is, if you're doing it long term, you're probably going to go through at least one economic cycle like this. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, I look at that as a positive about what we learned in 2008, so that if we do, and we did, and we have had additional cycles like this, we're prepared, right? We've seen it. We kind of know what to expect. We know how to react, and we know how to pivot. So let's talk about all this, economic news. How is this affecting the franchise industry, you think, Stacy?
Well, here's the irony of it. The franchise industry is booming. It's doing great. Even Entrepreneur publishes a lot of stats and data about the franchise industry. And for the past 5 years, the franchise industry has been growing at 13.7%, and it's projected to increase 3 to 4% yearly for the next 5 years. I'm not surprised by it because it's a proven system. And when you talk about those economic cycles, think about it. Would you rather be your own little independent mom and pop, or have a franchise with the support in the systems to help you negotiate rents, find the best places, negotiate the best prices on all the supplies and equipment and materials that you're going to need? That's the power of a franchise to help you get through every type of economic situation.
And I definitely think, this plays into that very much, in that the nice thing about a franchise at any point in time is that you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. We refer to this many times, in that you have the power of a bigger, larger organization to help you and to get guidance and to, if nothing else, socially discuss these topics with other people that are going through the exact same thing you are, so you can come up with solutions. There's a lot of benefit to that cohesiveness of a franchise in times when times get economically difficult. So with that being said, one of the things that, when you're looking out there, particularly now, to keep in mind is that not all franchises are created equal. And I think this is very true now with where we are economically. So Stacey, do you want to comment a little bit on what you believe when we're helping candidates makes a good introduction to a good franchise for them very important, particularly in an economic environment like we're seeing today?
Yeah. You bring up very valid points. And that's why also it is so important when you're considering and learning about franchise ownership to work with someone like us, with Dave and Stacy, because if you go out there and do this research on your own, it's very likely you're going to end up making a poor decision. We're going to help you get clarity on your why, but also matching your why to what's happening in the economy, but also what kind of franchises are doing well, because not all of them do well. Some do better in certain economic conditions versus others. So when it comes to us recommending certain categories of franchises, in general, you'll find us steer away from food and beverage related concepts. Why is that, Dave?
Well, food and beverage in a lot of cases requires brick and mortar and large investments. And that means that you could have a lot of capital tied up at a time where you need capital. I mean, it ties in with the economic cycle. Again, there's so many factors that go into it, and timing of things, that That's not necessarily 100% true in any industry, but in general, we use the example of COVID, right? When COVID was around and we were talking to franchisees, they were more concerned about, is this COVID proof? If I go into a business like anything right now, if another COVID were to come around, would this survive? Would it make it through? And all the franchises were talking about this and discussing this as one of their key benefits for their particular franchise. Well, it's the same thing with economy. It's exactly the same thing, just a different set of circumstances. I mean, that was a pretty extreme set. When the economy goes south and the banks tighten up and money's not flowing as freely out there, and you might be going out and you're trying to get money and, oh my God, it's 18% to get anything. It's a different set of circumstances that kind of lead to the same thing. And that is that there really is no great time to go into business, but it will pass. It will pass. Mm-hmm. And you just want to be in a place where you have done everything you can to mitigate the risks of those types of things. Number one, like being in a solid franchise that has solid results, that have been through economic downturns before and have a proven model of so. That's really what it comes down to.
Absolutely. So when we're looking at franchises that you might want to consider, irregardless of the economic times, we tend to focus on ones that are more need-based versus want-based. Because when it's need-based, people will always open up their wallets. And so categories that fit well into this are children. People are always spending money on their kids. They also spend money on their four-legged children, aka pets, which is a booming industry. We're also entering a time called the silver tsunami. We have an aging population that's going to be happening for at least the next 20 years. Our aging population needs to be taken care of, and the franchise industry is serving those constituents. So getting into senior care could be something to consider. And a huge industry that has so many different types of business models under it is home services. So those are the categories that we tend to recommend for our candidates for multiple reasons. They are economically resilient. They have strong ROI. Most of them have very low investments. And I think they can weather almost any economic times.
That's correct. And as we said, there's really never a perfect time. I mean, we went in at the perfect time, and 2 years later it was the worst possible time. So you can't really plan this. All right. So with all this being said, I'm going to wait until things get better. Is it possible? Is it possible? And does it make sense to try to time getting into a franchise opportunity if you're looking at a franchise at this point?
There is no perfect time. The time that's perfect is the time that you're finally ready to say, I want control of my life. I want a business that's going to help me achieve my why. And I'm open to learning and exploring about franchise ownership. As Dave said, you can't just roll the dice and today's the perfect day to open a franchise. We thought so in 2006 when we invested in our coffee smoothie franchise. Just know that you're going to go through different economic times and reach out to the franchise that you're interested in. Understand what economic times they've been through. The full benefit of a franchise is the others around you, the franchisees. You get to do your due diligence, talk to them, understand what kind of difficult times they've been through. And I think you'll learn a lot by being part of that conversation.
Those are all great points, Stacey. So with that, on this topic, the economy and franchises, are there any other suggestions you have for our listeners today?
Oh my goodness. Just reach out to us. If you are concerned about the economy, look, what you get from us is straight shooting. We are open, honest, transparent because we ultimately want you to find the business that's right for you. And here's the reality of it that most people won't tell you. Almost everybody who we talk to, they never make it to the end of the road. They never end up actually investing in a business. And that's okay if you do it for the right reasons. But at least you can start the process, be open to learning and exploring. As Dave said, a lot of businesses, like, look back in history, those that were in the Depression. When you start in bad times, you actually then are going to have all your systems, processes, everything in place. You can get a great labor market, negotiate great rents, great deals with your suppliers. When things improve, and they will, who's going to be top of mind? Here's the other thing we didn't talk about today, which is my passion: marketing. In bad economic times, nobody's spending money on marketing. It's always the first thing to be cut. So if you go out there with a franchise, invest some money in marketing, go out, shake hands, kiss babies, as I always joke about, you're going to be well primed to be the leader when things do turn around, and they will.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Great topic, very interesting to talk about, particularly with all the news we're hearing today and the franchise market space. So let's wrap this up. This is another episode of What's Your Next. If you like what we've covered here today, you like our topic, subscribe. It helps us in the algorithm, and we'll catch you on the next episode of What's Your Next.